Lori should take the second one. Um, in almost all of the studies that have been done with college populations, we see that the large majority of survivors do know their perpetrators, 80+% in most cases, and oftentimes know them well. I mean, sometimes they're people who they are maybe even potentially romantically interested in, and all of a sudden things go bad, go very bad at sometimes. Sometimes it's friends of friends, it's meeting people at parties, it's usually someone they've seen in a class or something like that. So it's the large majority in most cases, which is another reason that it sort of doesn't always meet that definition in their mind of what a sexual assault is or what a rape is. It's someone who's known to them.
And certainly the cases that I've worked at FSU bear that out. In the year and change I've been here, I've had one case where it was a stranger. Everything else has been some level of knowing that person.
And I'll do my best to attempt at the second one. So I'm going to kind of take it large, and then I'll bring it down to your question around specifically with parents. So my own personal experience is I worked as a victim advocate at Florida State University for about 2 years. I was an on-call advocate, crisis counselor, and then I moved to a full-time advocate, and then I moved into now my prevention role about 2 years ago. So I have a lot of different experiences from both the immediate time and all the way to working in education with students. I think it's important when we talk about prevention and education, we look at what we should be doing, like best practice, and then bringing it down to each level. So I think some of the things that we've done wrong in prevention and education over the years is our message has very much so been don't rape. And while, yes, don't do that, that doesn't work. Like, that is not enough. That has not worked, and it will not work. We've also only said that there's two people that are involved in this, the person who is being harmed and the person that is doing the harm. The reality is there's about 40 people in between those two people that could do something about it. So those are looking at your bystanders. Those are the people that can have conversations. Those are your changing in your culture and your society. But we haven't acknowledged that. We've only put it on the people who are doing the harm and the people who are experiencing the harm to change the narrative around prevention and education. We also have said one office and one person can do this, right? One domestic violence shelter, sexual assault crisis center in a community, you can do this. One office on campus, you can do this. One person, you can do this. They can do a lot, and they've been doing a lot, and they have changed this conversation for forever. But it's on all of us to do it, beyond just as people who get paid to do it. It's a bigger conversation. And when it comes to prevention, it's important that we have more than one conversation with students. So a lot of times we think, one time, one online course, one time hanging out with me, and it's gonna solve it. I'm an awesome human being. Like, I will totally own that. I'm pretty cool. But I'm not gonna change it one time. Maybe a couple times hanging out with me, we might see some differences, but it's not gonna happen in one time. So acknowledging that, right? And so figuring out ways to have multiple conversations with our children and also with students when they come to campus. How can I interact with them multiple times? Looking at the socio-ecological model, so looking from the individual all the way to the community and the support, how are we doing that? How are we hitting people at every layer, every level? So the messaging, for example, before they come to campus, you have a conversation with your student about what it is college, what is that experience. When they get to orientation, they have a conversation, they hear about Title IX, they hear about the Victim Advocate Program, and then when they go to their first day of classes, they see their professor has a slide on the screen that talks about support services or how to be a bystander. They go to the dining hall and they see a sign that says ways to be a bystander, and they realize that it's not just a one-time conversation, right? It's not just at one level individual, it's all the way through. I think that's one of the best ways that we can have this conversation. Also supporting survivors, making sure we're incorporating that in all of the work that we do with prevention education and how we talk to our students and our children before they go to college. So I, disclaimer, do not have any children. I hope to one day. But I do have a little sister, and she is 7 years younger than me, and she started at Florida State 2 years ago. So she lives with me. I'm sure she loves that. But I had these conversations with her. I had these difficult conversations, and it wasn't easy. So I personally have experienced sexual violence during my undergrad time at Florida State University. And I had a very open conversation with my little sister before she started about how I wanted to make sure that, you know, she knew the realities, but that she also knew she was strong and that she could do things and she could intervene and that she could help and she could play that role. So I also think that it's important to talk to our students and our children about sex education, because this is not exclusive. So talking about how to empower our students if they choose to engage in sexual activity, what that looks like, what consent looks like, how to have a conversation about that is so essential. A fun story, I was giving a presentation to a fraternity one time, who I am their favorite human that ever existed, I promise. Actually, we get along pretty well. And we're talking, and I asked them, I was really candid. I'm like, why do you all feel the need to drink to have sex? Like, why? Why is alcohol so essential? And this one brave soul in the front raised their hand, and they said, because we're nervous, and we don't know how. We don't know how to have this conversation. And in that moment, I realized that we need to do more in talking to our students and our children about what empowerment looks like across the spectrum, from not engaging all the way to engaging. What does that look like, and how do you talk to our students, and how do we talk to our children and our siblings about that? But also acknowledging that there is a place for risk reduction education. And I know Sam will probably touch on this. So looking at ways to make sure we're keeping ourselves safe, how to look out for each other, what it is, the buddy system. I know we learned that when we were, in line in elementary school. But listen, y'all, the buddy system is real life, and I use it all the time to this day, just checking in with people. Where are your friends? Who are you coming with? Making a game plan. The piece that I could say that would be so essential to talk to our students about before they go to college is that empowerment piece. You are strong, you are worthy, you are your own person, and you can make these decisions about your body and yourself and your relationships. And I'm always here for you to open that door for them, to let them know that you're that person, to have the conversation with them, and also let them know how to look out for each other. So tell them, when you go out, if you choose to, make plans with your friends. What is our game plan? What is our strategy? Even if you're not going out to a bar or a nightclub, you're just going to a social event on campus, right? What does that look like? How do you make plans? I think those are important things to talk about with our students and our siblings, because that's and our children. So I really appreciate that question, because it's really important.
I just wanted to add to that a little bit. I punted pretty quickly when you asked that question, because I always struggle with how to answer it, because I get asked it a lot. And Corey just said so many things. And to a lot of people, it might have sounded like, oh my gosh, that's overwhelming. She just said 85 different things that I should do as a parent to say. And I think it's partly because that might be what it takes, because it may be only 2 of those things that resonate with your child or her child or his child. And it's because so much of sexual assault prevention, I think, for the past few decades, some of it has failed because you bring all these students into a classroom and you tell them about sexual assault and you tell them of the dangers. And do you know how many people in that room truly think they're at risk? Very, very few. It's like the Charlie Brown teacher in the front going, wah, 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 wah. And then they go out and they think they're fine, and they are fine, and they're with their friends, and they're having fun, and they think they're fine, and they are fine. And then all of a sudden they're not. And it's nothing they could have seen. It's nothing they can control. We have survivor stories in our survey data where people talk about, this is what happened, everything was fine, I went to sleep. The party changed after I went to sleep. People came who I didn't know. I woke up and this was happening. There's nothing that woman could have done to predict it or to keep it from happening. But it's about having all these different ways of trying to reach kids and get them to understand, not to scare them to death so they don't want to go to college, because that you can scare people really badly, but making them aware that this stuff can happen in lots of different ways with lots of different people. I have a colleague who had her daughter sit down and watch The Hunting Ground. And she kept trying to talk to her daughter about sexual assault, and it was always like, I know, Mom, I know. And it wasn't until she sat down and watched The Hunting Ground that she realized, holy smokes, this happens to people just like me all the time. And she had the reaction, I don't want to go to college. She's since gotten over that. But it's about taking different approaches and having other people, maybe siblings, talk to them, and something starts to click, and they start to realize that this is something I really do need to think about and prepare for.